I've taken 5 different check rides, and every piece of advice I'm about to give you is from stuff I've either done wrong and regretted, or things I did right and I'm glad that I did it that way. So if you'll listen and implement this stuff, I promise it'll help you. First, you're probably watching this video because you're understandably nervous for this check ride that's coming up. And I think a really helpful starting place before you implement all the things I'm about to talk about is to realize that I don't think the goal is to get to like 0% nervous. A lot of people will say, well, if you're prepared, like you won't be nervous. And like respectfully, I just don't agree with that. Like for example, when I proposed to my now wife, I was 100% confident in that decision to propose to her. I mean, I had everything prepared. I had her family's blessing. I knew she was going to say yes. And yet, I was still shaking in my boots nervous. And I realized then that when you deeply care about the outcome of something, you're going to be nervous about it. So yes, prepare and work hard towards the check ride and just do as well as you can. But realize that if nerves are present, that probably just means that you care about the outcome. But this is really important. When you are feeling nervous, I think it's so important just for like 90 seconds to just peel back the onion a little bit and try to ask yourself a series of why questions, like why am I nervous? Because you'll quickly realize if it's like, yeah, because I don't know my regs or I don't know this. It's like, okay, great, then go study that. But for me, I find that it's like, it's at a deeper personal level than that. It's not because I'm like, well, I don't know this one thing. It's like, well, okay, well, let's go study that. But I'm still nervous. Like I'll peel it back and be like, well, why am I nervous? Well, I'm nervous of failing. Okay, well, why are you nervous of failing? Well, probably an ego thing because I'm gonna have to like tell people, the people that know I'm taking the check ride and that are thinking about me and praying for me and stuff. It's like, I'm gonna have to tell them, man, I failed. And it's like, okay, well then what happens? Well, then I will go brush up with the CFI and go retake the check ride for just the parts that I missed. And then what? It's like, well, then I can pass. Well, what if you don't? Well, I can do it again. So you're saying ultimately you can pass and you have as many tries as you want or need to take it. Yes. Okay. So it's really just an ego thing at the end of the day. Now we can work with that. Instead of just this general sense of nervousness and anxiety that I have for the test, it's like, okay, no, actually my ego is on the line. And now that's something we can work with and work through rather than just kind of this general boogeyman of nervousness. So remember this, remember that you can retake the test. And I think that will take some of the nerves out of it for you. Now, when it comes to actually studying the material for the check ride, I highly, highly recommend that you use this strategy that I'm calling clean the China.
China!
What the heck is that? Hear me out. I promise this will help. So the other day I watched this really, really good video by Ali Abdal. If you haven't checked out his channel, it's awesome. Highly recommend you check it out. But I will link this video up in the corner just for reference. But he was taking a look at these studies that study the effectiveness of study methods. In other words, he basically looked at all the different ways that we can study something and wanted to get to the bottom of which route is the most effective. The short version is basically that most of us study by reading things, rereading them, maybe highlighting, underlining, taking our own notes, or maybe even going all the way to like create your own summaries for things. And while these are definitely the most common ways of studying, they're actually also the least effective. But the thing that helped the most was forcing active recall. Well, what is that? Well, active recall is basically just a learning technique where you try to retrieve information from memory rather than just passively reviewing it. So instead of just constantly pushing or cramming information into our brains by reading and rereading over and over and over, active recall says, hey, let's form like this topic in the form of a question. And so instead of just reading, okay, well, Class D, VFR minimums or whatever, let's ask the question, what are Class D VFR weather like minimums and visibility and cloud clearance and stuff like that? And then so what that forces you to do is try to pull out of your brain whatever's in there, right? It might be the correct answer, you might be nowhere near it, or it might be somewhere close. You're gonna pull it out, be able to look at it, and then look at the correct answer and use that correct answer to polish whatever it is you just pulled out of your brain, polish it up, then push it back in. It's kind of this pull, polish, push method that works way, way better than just cramming and reading and rereading information. So back to cleaning the China, as I am now starting to call it. You might not even own China or valuable tableware like that, but your brain sure does. It absolutely has valuable information, and the way to clean it and to keep it up to date is to pull it out, polish it up, and then push it back in instead of constantly just cramming stuff in over and over and over, because the information in your brain is gathering dust just like the china in your china cabinet, and the only way to keep that sharp is to pull it out, polish it, and push it back in. you got to clean the china. So what does this look like practically? Well, if you're using the oral exam study guide, which is a really common resource whenever you're studying for a Checkride, make sure to actually try to answer the question before you just end up going on and reading the answer. Like that's what I did, like I didn't do, which was I would just read it like a textbook as I'm falling asleep at night, and it wasn't helpful because it wasn't forcing active recall. So try to answer the question. If you are taking notes on your online ground school and stuff like that, try to just reframe your notes as questions. So instead of just writing all the Class D, VFR minimums or whatever, like write that as a question. And then as you're going through your notes, you can read the question, attempt to answer it. You're going to clean the china, and that can be more effective than just reading and rereading your notes over and over and over. Obviously, another really good way is to build flashcards. But the thing, like we can totally misuse flashcards if we're just reading the front, and then turn it over and read the back. At that point, it's basically just a textbook with all the pages unbound, and you're not actually harnessing the power of active recall. So make sure to try to actually answer the question before you flip it over. And if you're looking for a turnkey solution as you're preparing for your Checkride, and you want help cleaning the china, so to speak, I want to let you know I actually just launched my own set of private pilot study flashcards. There are over 350 of them in the set, and they took me almost a year and a half to make, and they're edited and approved by flight instructors. And as of this filming, they have over 135 five-star reviews. So you can check them out over at airplaneacademy.com/flashcards if you'd like to learn more, or the link is also down in the description. Now, next, during the oral part of your exam, whenever they ask you a question, I want you to answer the question and then stop talking. I want you to think of this like the opposite of a first date. This is the anti-first date. Like you're not trying to get to a second date. You're not trying to give some long, whimsical answer that's beautiful and poetic. No, you are trying to respectfully be the most boring first date they've ever been on. Because if you answer the question and then start giving all this color commentary and elaborating on it just to try to show that you know the topic, one, you run the risk of saying something stupid or incorrect. And then two, you give the examiner more to chase and be like, oh, well, you mentioned this. What about that? And so the best thing you can do is just answer the question. Remember, this is the anti-first date. Answer the question and shut up and be okay with silence. Because I can tend to fill the silence conversationally. And so you never know. You might answer the question and be completely right and completely appropriate. And they might be looking down and trying to think of the next question or like writing, taking notes. And you can misread that as, oh, they need more. They want more. Maybe I didn't give them enough. So I'm just going to start, like we're talking about pedostatic failure. So I'm just going to start saying anything that comes to mind. Well, this could fail. And then this. And it's like, dude, if you've answered the question, you're confident you've answered the question, like just stop talking. Like put the ball back in their court. You are a boring first date. You're not looking for a second date. You don't need to charm the examiner with all the extra info you think you know. And if you want some practice with that, I highly suggest you watch several mock check rides on YouTube. It is one of the greatest gifts to aviation we have ever gotten on the internet to be able to watch these, and it'll help you tremendously. But one way to kind of take this a step further is to take notes on these videos and then even try to frame those notes as questions. Like write down the same questions that the examiner asked in the video, and that will help force active recall, going back to the earlier point. And while we're on the topic of mock check rides, be sure to ask your CFI to give you a mock check ride. Most will, but just in case they haven't brought it up, absolutely ask them for one. It'll help you a ton. One thing I did during my commercial check ride that I could tell my examiner appreciated was first I numbered every single page of both my logbooks, and then coming over my computer here, I wrote down all the different requirements that you had to have, like the prerequisites for the commercial. And so like you just look at this one, like 2-hour cross-country daytime with total straight line distance of greater than 100 nautical miles. Cool, go to logbook 2 on page 3. That's where I satisfy this requirement, and on and on. And it made it really, really easy to go audit my logbook and do that quickly. And I could tell that she appreciated my organization. So this doesn't take very long to do. You need to make sure you have all the requirements anyways. So you got to do this. You might as well document it and hand it over to your examiner and say, hey, I'm prepared, and just be organized. Try to do as much as you can to help them out. Then on top of that, I would have all of your documentation ready and organized in some kind of file or with sticky notes or something. Like have the airplane logbooks with you, and if asked, be able to show the recent AD log or the recent annual or whatever. Like just have it organized on the table. If you can just show up to like wherever you're having your check ride and like they'll let you sit in the classroom 15 minutes early, just get it all set up on the table, be nice and organized. Just show that you know what you're doing. It's gonna help. And now, once you're kind of moving out of the oral and into the flight, this is one really big regret I have from one of my check rides. Like on that particular check ride, I feel like the oral went great. And now I was just moving to the flight. I'm like, okay, I feel confident in the flight. Like things are good. Like I'm getting more relaxed. I feel like I'm developing rapport with the examiner and stuff. And this is where I screwed up. I started to get chummy. I started to get a little too familiar, a little relaxed and stuff. And I remember we were pre-flying the airplane. I was cleaning off the windshield. And she asked me, she goes, hey, so, we're leaving out of Addison here. What are our options if we have an engine failure on takeoff? And I was kind of cleaning the windshield, like just, I don't know. Like, and I just say, well, I kind of laughed. I was like, well, they're not good. As I'm like scrubbing the windshield. And appropriately, she said, that's not an answer. What are our options? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like I kind of got rattled there to remember, like, dude, you're in a check ride. Like she's asking a very reasonable question. Like, answer the question. Now is not the time to get chummy. So it occurred to me, like, you need to stay focused regardless of how well the check ride is going. Usually I think like, hey, if it's not going great, like stay focused, keep trying. But the opposite is true. Like if it is going really, really well, like you got to stay focused. Don't get chummy. Answer the question. This is the anti-first date. You just need to be a very respectful, boring first date and answer the question. Don't do what I did and be like, well, it's not good. Because that wasn't a good answer. And then once you're in the flight, one thing that can mess you up if you're not careful is this. Depending on the check ride, you'll probably be departing the airport as though you're going on a cross country that you have planned. So you'll start that cross country as you depart. And then at some point into the flight, they'll say, okay, we've gone far enough. Now let's cancel that cross country simulation. And now let's do some maneuvers. So show me some steep turns or whatever. And at this point, it is really important that you slow down and start at the right speed because you're probably coming out of cruise and going straight into that maneuver. And so keeping your airspeed within a certain range is part of the ACS. And if you just go into the maneuver straight from full cruise speed, you probably won't end up at that same speed at the end. So slow down, get set up with the right engine settings that hopefully you've practiced in training. And here's a curveball you should be ready for. On my multi-engine commercial check ride, this is what happened. Like we did the cross country, whatever. We got set up. We were going to start doing steep turns. And so we're like, okay, we're doing steep turns. Let's do some clearing turns. So I'm doing clearing turns. I turn my head out to the left and I'm like looking, I'm like, clear left, let's turn left. And as I'm doing that, I'll never forget it. As I'm doing that, the left engine, which I'm staring at, just like fails, like complete engine failure. Like it's not simulated either. Like the engine is dead. And I realized that as I was doing, looking left for clearing turns, the examiner had reached down and cut off the fuel to my left engine, which was really sneaky. And so you have to remember that like those like simulated emergencies can come at any time. And when you're setting up for the procedure, like steep turns or whatever, that might actually be the decoy to kind of get your brain on like, okay, we're doing steep turns. And that's when an emergency happens, because that's real life, right? Like you can't plan for an emergency. It's not going to happen at the perfect time. So I don't want that to like freak you out and be like, oh my gosh, it's coming. But like you guys, it kind of goes back to like staying sharp the whole way. You're like, okay, I'm really good at steep turns, so I can relax now. Let me do some clearing turns. Like they might throw an emergency in the middle of those steep turns or whatnot. So be prepared for that curveball. Like, again, don't let that freak you out. Just remember, like, you just got to try to stay focused the whole time. And as you're doing these maneuvers, I've always taken the stance that you should just try to narrate what you're doing. Like if you're doing a maneuver and you realize your airspeed is a little off or your altitude is a little off, I think it's better to announce it, like to call attention to it and say that you're correcting, like altitude, like correcting, altitude correct, airspeed correcting. Just be short, like let them know that you see it rather than just a hope that they didn't see that. Because like, of course they saw it. They're literally an examiner for a living. They examine for a living. And DBs will tell you that perfection is not the standard. So if you're not being perfect on something, just announce what you're doing about it. And I think if they know that you see it and you're correcting it, you're doing something about it, I think they're going to give you a little more latitude than if you're off and you're just not saying anything, because they don't even know if you see it. And they're like, what's this guy thinking? Does he know he's low? Like, what's going on? And so I've always taken the stance, just try to narrate what you're doing and be professional about it. If you'd like to check out my flashcards that can help you in your check ride prep, in the video on the screen, I'll give you all the details. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.